continue with some famous quotes on aging. Time is the fire in which we all burn. Anonymous. The following are a conversation Mark Twain, a U.S. writer, had with students in a lecture hall. He asked, Mark Twain that is, everyone, where is the most dangerous place in the world? And many answers came, including the sea, streets, the top of the mountain. And guess what Mark Twain said? He laughed, saying, the most dangerous place is the bed. 80% of people die there. Something to laugh about. But it is true, right? Oh, this one is so profound. When I was 17, my father was so stupid. I didn't want to be seen with him in public. When I was 24, I was amazed at how much the old man had learned in just 7 years. Isn't this just a wonderful quote? This is a Snoopy cartoon. We often do say this, right? We only live once. But the dog, with a very high IQ, I guess, wrong. We only die once. We live every day. This is a graph showing how we feel about our own age, and this is quite agreeable, I'm sure you'll find. When you're in your teens, you wish you were older, right? But that starts to change, and when you reach like the age of 30, that's when you sort of start wishing you were younger. I'm sure you're not there yet, but I'm sure you'll be able to remember this figure when you do reach that age. Age is just a feeling, as you can see here. This is a graph showing how old we feel physically and mentally compared to our actual age. Okay, so you can see the mental age is much younger than the physical age. Okay, so you feel 4 years younger physically. That's sort of an average. But you feel like 12 years younger mentally, if not more than that. I think I feel like 20 years younger. Maybe that's just a wish. And who we spend our time with across our lifetime, this is age. So as you get older, you spend much more time alone, okay? So, you don't have to prepare for this kind of a aging thing, but what I would recommend is that you do have a hobby that can be done on your own, right? By yourself, right? Not doing things together. But, so whether it's movie, watching, reading a book, or listening to music, have a hobby and enjoy your life. All right, we're starting to get more serious now. The most dreaded 4 Ds. We can say disaster, divorce. I should qualify this. Most dreaded 4 Ds in life, something like that, right? Disaster, divorce, disease, and death. Anyway, finally, an introduction. in recent years, assisted suicides involving two elderlies made headlines. Okay. So I already mentioned the difference between euthanasia and assisted suicide. So, well, say it one more time. Euthanasia refers to a deliberate action taken with the intention of ending a life to relieve persistent pain. So again, to qualify for euthanasia, one must have a terminal illness. Assisted suicide, on the other hand, just individual wanting to end his or her life, doctor helps in this wish. It's legal only in Switzerland, from what I know. Maybe you could look this up and see if there's another country that does this or legalizes assisted suicide. So about 1,300 people died there in this way in 2020. And I have some actual sort of stories to tell. Gil Farrow, a 75-year-old British nurse, made headlines in 2015 after she decided to end her life because she had no desire to grow old or become a burden to her family. She had no health issues, but felt that getting old is awful, as she witnessed so many people die painfully at the hospital she worked at. On July 21st, 2015, Gil ended her life at a Switzerland assisted suicide clinic with her partner of 25 years at her side. Her decision has sparked the debate over the right to die. So, when it comes to people committing suicide, the age group that has the highest suicide rate is the oldest. Okay, so suicide rate is positively correlated with age. The older the person is, higher the suicide rate, and there are many reasons. And in Korea, at least, many elderlies are found to have committed suicide because they don't want to be a burden to their family, right? So there's a good example there. The second case involved 104-year-old Professor David Goodall, Australia's oldest scientist at the time, who ended his life at the same Swiss-assisted suicide clinic on May 10th, 2018. In his final hours, Goodall enjoyed his favorite dinner, fish and chips and cheesecake. And in his final minutes, he listened to Beethoven's Ninth Symphony, reportedly passing away shortly after the piece of music finished. Family members were with Goodall until his death, which was preceded by formal paperwork that visibly frustrated the scientist, who said, "What are we waiting for?" Goodall had lived on his own, and though he was not terminally ill, he had seen his eyesight and mobility deteriorate considerably in recent years. He said that his life stopped being enjoyable 5 or 10 years ago. Dr. Goodall was forced to travel to Switzerland because assisted dying remains prohibited in Australia, as is the same in most other countries. And this is what he said: "I have serious concern about a community where we make arbitrary decisions about whose life is valuable enough to continue and whose should be ended under the law." I've actually watched a video or documentary on Korean television, which featured a Korean person going to the same Swiss clinic. And, well, at least the way the whole documentary showed, it was really wonderful, where the person wishing to go through this assisted suicide took his family members and closest friends to Switzerland. And they were having fun, they were laughing. And he just didn't want to wait or go through the, because he was not terminally ill. He just wanted to sort of end his life when he was still healthy. And he didn't want to be a burden to his family. And the people who were there for the final minutes, they all didn't cry, because after the person actually died, they all said they didn't want to cry, because if they did, the person who died would have also made the whole occasion a sad event, right? Not something sort of joy. I don't know if it's if the term joyable is a good term, but make it a sort of a wonderful passing, not painful. Anyway, something to think about, and that's your keyword for today: assisted suicide and euthanasia. And that's him, just one day before assisted suicide. Well, so I'll just jump to the questions. What is the nature of population aging in the world and in Korea? What are the factors which account for population aging in Korea? What are the impacts of population aging at the societal level? And what are the impacts of aging at the individual level? So how person who is old, what kinds of problems do they go through? Okay? The elderly, the beginning. So from what age do we see people as being an elderly? What age is that? 65. Sometimes I ask an obvious question and you guys take some time to answer it, but it's 65, right? This is universally recognized standard, okay? And this is a trivia fact. It started somewhere, right? And guess where it started from? It started in Prussia, now Germany, in 1889. Well, guess why this happened? Chancellor Bismarck, okay? Well, Prussia at the time was about to implement the world's first old age benefit, okay? So again, they were trying to provide subsidies to people who are old. And they were like thinking, okay, from what age should we provide this old age benefit to, right? And Chancellor Bismarck was asked, you know, what age do you think is the right age from which, you know, that we provide this old age benefit, right? And Bismarck was like, 65. Okay? Now, this is back in 1889. You know why it made sense? It made sense because, can you believe this? Life expectancy at birth in 1889 was roughly 30 years. That's a global average, not Prussia. Okay? What's the global average of life expectancy at birth today, roughly? Take a guess. If you haven't seen it, you'll not be able to guess it. Abby, take a guess. Global average? Believe it or not, it's over 70. It's like 72 or 73. Okay? But you see how the world, you see how, you know, the France right now, they're having a lot of strikes and demonstrations because the French government wants to raise the age for retirement. Well, I hope they go through it successfully, so that they set a model for other countries to follow. Because, again, the age 65 as the beginning of the elderly made total sense back in 1889, right? 130 years later, for us to be still stuck with this age 35 as the beginning of the elderly is definitely outdated, okay? You know how we used to celebrate 60th birthday with a great fanfare? As late as like 20 years ago, because not too many people lived past the age of 60, okay? But we don't celebrate it anymore because we have one of the world's highest life expectancy at birth, okay? So, well, I hope you sort of know this, at least as a trivia fact, okay? Anyway, the age of 65 years as the beginning of the elderly eventually became the standard. But for about 99.9% of human history, the average life expectancy hovered around 20 years. If we were living back 2,000 years ago, is there anyone who's younger than 20? We'll be all dead by now, right? I don't know if I showed you this, but I mean the graph I'll be showing you later. The world average of life expectancy at birth began to increase only after the Industrial Revolution, and here we go. Okay, so in 1900, the world average of life expectancy at birth was only 31 years. In 1950, 48 years. 2017, 72 years. So I should have updated that, right? So in 2020, the world average is 73. But that's just an average, right? I repeatedly mentioned fallacy of average, right? So when I talk about life expectancy at birth later, I'll show you a list of countries that have the world's lowest life expectancy at birth. And some of them, I think, are lower than 50, okay? This is a world average of life expectancy at birth. So 2,000 years ago, it was 23. It remained quite constant for about 2,000 years, right? So only with the advent of better hygiene and medical technology around the Industrial Revolution did we start to enjoy longer life expectancy at birth. So this is sort of a regional differences, right? So as you can see, Europe and Oceania have the, higher life expectancy at birth than other continents. All right. Now we turn to global trends in population aging. An elder explosion or gray tsunami is sweeping the world today. Global trends in population shows that population aging is unprecedented, without parallel in human history. 21st century will witness even more rapid aging than ever before. So is this something that everyone knows about? That the world is aging? All right, good. According to the UN, in 1950, there were 129 million persons aged 65 and older on the planet, or 5% of the world population. that total has jumped to 530 million, or 7.7% of the world population. But it is projected that by 2050, nearly 16% of the global population will comprise of the elderly. Okay? So you can see how between 1950 and 2050, the proportion of the elderly among the global population will triple, okay, from 5% in 1950 to more than nearly 16% in 2050. Okay? So this is in 1950, 2000, 2050. So you can see how from 1950 to 2050, the proportion of the elderly among the global population will nearly triple. Okay? Again, this is happening in just 100 years. Okay? And if you look to like 2100, it'll be significantly higher. In 2019, for the first time in human history, people aged 65 and older outnumbered children under age 5. And this, I think, has happened for the first time ever in human history. Okay? So again, in 2019, for the first time in human history, people aged 65 and older, yellow line, exceeded the total number of children under 5. And as you can see here, you may think that the sort of, I think this is a good sort of a graph to know, because globally speaking, yes, women are having less number of children, thankfully, right? This is just the global trend, right? So you can see here that back in 1950, global fertility rate was a 4.7, okay? But it has been declining like since the early 1970s, and as of 2017, global fertility rate was 2.48, and by 2100, it'll fall to about 1.7. Okay, all right. So because of this particular sort of, it's still above 2.1 replacement fertility level, right? So that's why the population is still growing, okay? Although the pace has slowed somewhat. Just for fun, where do the majority of the elderly population live? In developed countries or developing countries? See, the reason I ask this question is because it's tricky, okay? Because where do the large majority of the population live? Developing or developed countries in the world? Developing, so that's the answer. So there are actually more elderlies living in the developing world, okay? Because of the sheer population size of the developing countries, okay? So here we go. The light brown shaded bar is the developed countries. The blue shaded bar is developing countries. So if we stick with 2020, you can see how about 2/3 of the elderlies of the world live in developing countries. And there is a phenomenon called the feminization of aging. So due to women's longer life expectancy in most nations of the world, global aging is an issue that is more related to women. In the US in 2015, for example, for every 100 women aged 65 and older, there were 81 men. There are only 62 men for every 100 women age 60 and over. So as people get older, there are a larger number of women than men, as you can see in this US example. Okay, now we turn to what's happening in Korea. And I think some of the data that I have to share with you will be totally shocking, I think. Korea is currently the most rapidly aging society in the world. And the proportion of the elderly in the total population in Korea was 4.1% in 1984. But soared to 17.5% last year. And it is expected to reach over 20% in 2025. And the ratio of the elderly in the total population is expected to rise to 24.3% in 2030 and 2050, 37% in 2050. Which will be the highest or the second highest in the world after Japan. Well, there are certain terms you have to just memorize. I'll give you a moment to digest, okay? If this is on the exam, you should be able to connect the dots, right? Aging, 7%, aged, 14%. Super aged, 21%. No, it's 20. You know, on many essay type exams, I would always have a few who would super age society as having like 21% because they just simply multiply 7, 14, 21, right? But it's not. It's 20%. Okay, so these are universally used concepts, okay? Society is considered aging society when the elderly comprise more than 7% of the total population. And society is considered an aged society when the elderly consist of more than 14% of the total population. And super age society when the elderlies comprise more than 20% of the total population. Okay? Well, you can easily look this up on the internet, right? Aging society, aged, super aged, and you get a nice definitions. So Korea became an aging society in 2000, aged society in 2017, and will become a super aged society in 2025. Now, I want to tell you that, so how long did Korea take to make a transition from aging society to aged society? 17 years. Now, how long do you think Korea will take to transform from an aged society to super aged? 8 years, right? Now, what alarms Korean policymakers is the speed at which Korea is transforming itself, because which country do you think holds the record? And in terms of making these transitions, it's Japan. And Japan, when Japan set these records, nobody expected this world record to be broken. But guess which country is breaking it and is expected to break it? It's Korea. You know, I think Korea may like to break Japan's records of whatever kind, but this is not a good one. And I have a good table to show you. Okay? Look where Japan is. It took Japan 24 years to make a transition from aging to aged society. It took Japan 12 years to make a transition from aged to super aged. All world records, never expected to be broken by any country. But look what Korea has been doing. It broke Japan's record by 7 years. It will break Japan's record by 4 years. If you look at other countries like Germany, Italy, US, Sweden, France, they took like 40 years, and France 115 years. Look at aged, and these are sort of a forecast, right? It'll take France 39 years, Sweden 40 years, USA 21 years to make a transition from aged to super aged. So from this table, you can easily think that Korea's record will never be broken. Okay? Because can you imagine another country having such a low fertility rate as Korea? Okay? So I hope this is enough to... So just to continue with a comparison with Japan. So this is Korea. So back in 1970, Korea's fertility rate was more than double that of Japan's, right? But as of 2022, so even Japan, you know, is also worried, right? That because Japan's fertility rate is also one of the lowest in the world, okay? But, you know, in comparison to Korea's fertility rate, it's respectable, you know? The proportion of the elderlies in Korea will continue to rise propitiously in the near future like this. There are some slight differences in certain numbers, but by 2067, nearly half of the population in Korea will comprise of the elderlies. Is this scary or not? Very scary. Okay? And it'll be more scary when I talk about the economic impact of having so many elderlies. Okay? And the population distribution according to age, this is Korea. In 1970, a typical population pyramid, but by 2010 already, we have a different, it's like a rugby ball or a pylon. No, not pylon. Yes, rugby ball or American football ball, right? And by 2050, it'll be inverse pylon, right? Or pyramid. And just by making this comparison with the pattern of the world, you can see how Korea's population sort of a bar distribution looks similar in 1970, but by 2010 already different, and by 2050 it'll be very different. Okay? And this is the proportion of the elderly comparison of Korea and the world. This is Korea and the world. Although the proportion of the elderly in the world is increasing, but it's not even half that of Korea in 2067. There are two reasons for the declining population in Korea, hence the rapid aging of the population. What are the two reasons, you think? What are the two factors that contribute to the rapid aging of the population in Korea? This is not question just to Korea. When a country is said to be aging, what are the two factors that cause this to happen? Yes. Yes, thank you. One, lower fertility rate, okay? Or lower birth rate. And the other one is? This should be a good question for the final exam. I list two factors and throw in a false factor, and I say which one is not a factor for a rapid aging of a population. Anyone? It's a hint, yes. Thank you. All right? So again, there are two factors at play which make a population of a country age. One is higher life expectancy at birth, so people are living longer, basically, right? And second, more importantly, lower fertility rate. Okay, so here we go. Okay, increasing average life expectancy at birth and low fertility rate. These are the two factors, and let me show you some details. The increasing average life expectancy at birth in Korea, life expectancy at birth in 1950 was 52 years. 1970, it was 61.93, and the latest figure is, which is 2021, 83.6 years. Okay, so Korea has a really impressive history, right, of this increasing life expectancy at birth. So this is the average men and women. So women in Korea outlive men by 6 years. Okay, and countries actually differ on this. All right, and Korea has the third highest life expectancy at birth as of 2020. This is not from last 2 years ago, but from 2020. And you could see some of your countries here, I guess, right? And this is where I will show you, again, global average in 2020 was 73, right? But these are countries which have the world's lowest life expectancy at birth. Chad, Nigeria, and so on. Okay. So the global average to these people in these countries doesn't mean much, right? And the reasons for the declining population or higher the aging population is the low fertility rate and we set a world record, and I think this record will only be broken by Korea. Okay, I think I told you, right? We keep track of monthly birth total, and we're breaking new record every month. Okay, so when we find out fertility rate for 2023, it'll be lower than 0.78. So when it will stop, nobody knows, because people are not getting married, and even when they get married, having even just one child, you just cannot take that for granted, and parents do not really try to, put pressure on their, married children to have a baby, because the parents themselves know how difficult it is to raise a child. in Korea. So the figure is the lowest since such data have been collected since the mid-1950s. Also, the number of monthly births has been on the decline for the 81st. Is that the right saying? 81st? Straight month since December 2015 compared to the same month last year. Korea's fertility rate is forecast to fall to as low as 0.61 in the next few years. Okay? So, believe it or not, back in 1960, the fertility rate in Korea was 6.16, okay? But it's been declining ever since. And again, the lowest in 2022. And these are with numbers, okay? So, in 1970, there were over 1 million births. Last year, less than 1/4. At 249,000, okay? And I have mentioned this before, replacement level fertility rate is the fertility rate that is needed to maintain a current population. So the current population in Korea right now is, let's say, 51 million. If Korea wants to maintain that level, 51 million, we need a fertility rate of 2.1. So what's happening in Korea is that fertility rate in Korea right now is just a little bit over 1/3, okay, of what is needed to maintain the current level of population. 1/3 of what is needed to maintain the current level of population. So unless we, bring in migrants or immigrants, Korea can be said to be in big trouble as far as this aging population's impact on economy is concerned. Well, this is just for fun. Do you think the fertility rate in Seoul is higher or lower than other major cities and provinces? Why? Well, I think the reason is very simple, right? Everything is more expensive in Seoul, and everything is more competitive in Seoul, right? So couples are discouraged from having a child because, again, everything is more expensive, and including sending kids to Hagwon. It costs more in Seoul than anywhere else, and again, everything is more competitive. So here are the numbers. Again, this is 2022 national average 0.78. So you have the figures, and then where's Seoul? 0.59. And this is really terrible, not good, because Seoul is the largest city in Korea. Okay, 1/5 of the total population live in Seoul. Okay, and the next most popular populous area is Gyeonggi-do. Okay, and there it's slightly higher than the national average. For comparison, the average fertility rate of the OECD member countries in 2020 was 1.59. So Korea is the only country among the 38 member countries of the OECD to have a fertility rate below 1.0. So here it is. Israel has the OECD's highest fertility rate at 2.9, followed by Mexico, France, USA. These are selected, but the top 4 I have maintained the rank. Okay, maybe not. Mexico, that's definitely number 2. Okay, and there you go. This is from 2020. Okay. Just for fun, I just wanted to show you how things are bad in North Korea, but its fertility rate is estimated to be much higher than that of South Korea. So you can see how the fertility rate of 2 is almost being maintained by North Korea. Okay? So, well, I'll stop here and I'll finish up the rest of aging of Korea on Wednesday in the pre-recorded. So I'll cover the rest in the Wednesday's morning lecture. Okay? Thank you, and I'll see you on Wednesday.